Hello, good morning YouTube. Today we're going to talk about how to measure and mix lye. I'm using lye from Essential Depot, and I'll put a link into the video on where to find that. And I highly recommend these pitchers that you purchase at the Dollar Tree or the dollar store. They're a heavyweight plastic. They're not thin and flimsy. And because they're tall and skinny, you can stir real well and not worry about it being splashed on you. Alright, so now the first thing we're going to do is put on my gloves. So hang on a second and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got on my heavyweight gloves. I highly recommend those. I don't think those thin, flimsy gloves protect your hands enough because this stuff's really hot if it splashes. So now, first, I'm going to turn off my scale, and I'm going to I've already filled up all my water, so I guess that won't work. But we'll do the lye that way. So I have got the water already measured in, and it's the same principle for the lye as it is the water. And I've got a stainless steel whisk with a plastic handle. You only want to use plastic and stainless steel. Glass jars, I'm told, will eventually break down, and one day it will just pop, and you will get lye everywhere, and the jar will break. So I'm going to put my lye container on there. I like that it has a handle, and that the container fits inside this, so I'm not trying to pour into a smaller topped container with a larger mouthed opening. And I like that it has the little pour spout. So I'm going to turn on my scale. There we go. And it has zeroed out. I can pick it up and then put it back down, and it is still zeroed out. And that's very important. When you just tare, if you lift it just slightly, then when you put it back down, it weighs the container and what's in the container. So by turning it off and then turning it back on with the container empty and on it, it works the best. Okay. And so then we will do our lye, and I need 5.5 today. And so I'm going to just slowly shift it in. If you spill drops of the lye, you don't want to use a moist towel to clean it up. You want to try to vacuum it away or sweep it away in a dry way, because as long as lye is dry, it is not as harmful. But once it becomes moist, even from the sweat of your hand, it becomes deadly. Okay, I just got a little bit over, but because I have that little pour spout, I can, there we go, I'm at 5.5. And so another thing I like is I'm always doing a whole bunch of batches at one time. So I put my whisk in the one that's going to be done next. So I know this one is next. And so then I will pour it in, and because the container that I'm pouring in is the way it is, I can tap and get all the residue. And then I'm going to whisk, and I can whisk pretty hard because my container is tall and skinny. And I'll move this container. If you can see how clear this water is, and you see how cloudy that water is, it will become clear, and that's when it's ready for use. I don't use it until it becomes clear. Here's some I've already measured, and you can see the difference in the clearness. But still, it's not as clear as just plain water, but it is close. And so you don't want to breathe the fumes. The fumes are very harmful. Before I had a soap room, I I always did it in the kitchen with the vent for the stove on. And a lot of people recommend that you do it outside, but I have dogs. And I would just die if one of my dogs knocked me, tripped me up or knocked over my container and was injured by the lye water. And so I don't trust taking it and doing it outside. Oh, another method you can use, let me get one, is you can take a small dry spoon and you can then put it in your container. And that's much safer, and that would probably be the best route for my advice on how to do it. So my whisk is in the next container, so I'm going to move it over and I'm going to dump and then whisk away. And so ventilation is very important. Now I'm going to go back and do this one again, and do this one again, and do this one again, and then put it in the next container that's supposed to have lye. So I'm going to keep working on these. All those crocks over there have got oil in them, and they're hot, and they are ready for soap, or ready for lye, so we can make soap. I'm going to do some more videos, so check my channel for some more new episodes of how to make soap. And I'm going to do a goat's milk unscented oatmeal and honey. So stay with us. I forgot to mention that when you are mixing lye or soaping, never have any children anywhere near the process. It is your choice when your child is old enough to fully understand the impact of lye and the damage that it could do to them. But until you feel that your child is old enough, which would be high teens for me, I think, never have them anywhere near loose in the house, is my opinion. That they could come into where you're at when your back is turned. Lye is so deadly, it can put your eyes out, it'll take your skin off. It is very, very harmful. I have 2 grandchildren, and I have a child gate that I use when I'm not in here, to make sure that they can't even get into the room by accident. And then normally, I know you see me making soap normally at night, and that's because they are safely in their beds and in their house next door. But I won't normally risk making soap during the day if there's just the possibility that they could get in my house and I not realize it. I read an article, it was a horror story about a young mother with a 2-year-old who reached up and grabbed the handle of the pitcher of lye and dumped it on his head. And I cried through most of the story. And I'm just telling everybody out there that's considering making soap, make sure your children, or any children that could be in your home, are in a state that there is no way that they could possibly come in to where you're doing the lye and you're soaping. It is too dangerous. Today, my daughter and her children are gone, so I'm able to soap during the day. But that's how serious I take it, and I hope that everybody else out there will take it as seriously as I do, because the thought of you being responsible for life-threatening injuries, possible blindness, or disfiguring scars, and the loss of digits of your child or a child that you love is more than anyone should ever consider trying to live through. So take the precautions, be dogmatic about it, and you will never ever have to worry about it. Take risk with yourself, but do not take risk with children. And that is my plea. So we have completed our video on how to mix lye. And in a few moments, I'm going to do some more videos, and so you can watch my channel. And I'm sorry for such a sad, drastic note, but it's just so important that as a first-time soaper, that you know that. I'm very blessed that I read that article before I started making soap. So there's no possibility that I can ever make that mistake. So have a great day. Alright, now here's my Crocs. I've got my stick blender ready. And I have that on a long extension cord so that there's no chance of me accidentally tipping something over because the cord's shortened on me. And I'm using a thermometer. I think that's a candy, yeah, it's a candy thermometer. And you want your oils not to be hotter, or the way I do it, I don't like my oils being hotter than 120, and I don't like my lye to be hotter than 110. And so then when you pour that in, you have your stick blender ready. And because your container is nice and tall and has a small opening, you can just pour it right in. And then I immediately take that to the sink to be flushed. And so, and my sink's a little dirty, sorry. I've been cleaning Crocs. And then you just keep your stick blender on the bottom of the pot. I like to do it at a slight angle, but touch the bottom. And then I go around a little bit, but there's a lesser chance of splash if you're not coming up here around the top with your stick blender. If you stay towards the bottom, you're safer. Alright. And now I'm going to do number 2. And I'm going to put that in the sink, my dirty sink. It's safer in the sink, you know. If it tips over, you can just flush it with water, which is what I normally do next. But I'm going to go ahead and mix with you. Alright, now that is how you mix your lye into your oils. And just to back up, I had this on low for a good long while until the oils were safely and the soap that's around the edges is just never been colored and never been scented, so it's okay to leave it in the crock. If you scent and you have used your color in here, it will alter traces, you know, slight changes to your soap, but it's not a big deal unless you're doing a soap that's for specific reasons like cedarwood tea tree is great to repel bugs, so you wouldn't want to do anything to conflict that, or citronella tea tree, or if you were doing a hypoallergenic, you know, unscented soap, you would not want to use a crock that had residue in it. But anyway, I put this on low. And I waited till the oils were completely clear, and then I turned it off and let the oils cool to the desired temperature that I spoke about already before I put my lye in. I'm told if you put really, really hot lye into really, really hot oil, you can get a volcano effect, and that's why they recommend using besides of course splash, but that's one of the reasons I recommend using goggles when you are mixing lye and bringing your soap to trace. So that is how you mix the lye into your crock of oils for hot process. Now I'm going to put lye in this one, and this one is a real pain in the butt because the crock is very, very, very shallow. See the difference? It's good in some ways for when you're doing rebatching, but because it's easier to work the soap with the stick blender when it starts to soften up. But it's worse, and I know that's probably not a word, worse. Anyway, it's not as good when it comes to not getting splashed on. So I highly recommend the tall crocks over the skinny ones, because you really have to watch yourself and watch your stick blender. If you'll notice, I do not put it at an angle with this one. I just move it around, and then I try some back and forth. But you cannot do an angle because it will spew soap right in your face or on your poor sleeping dog next door. I had a lady that burnt her dog. I felt so horrible, but her stick blender splattered just a little bit and it got her dog. And you never like put lye in this one and put lye in this one and don't mix immediately. You always mix immediately. So now this is when we first have the lye in the oils. I like to keep it at a slight angle, but keep the beater firmly pressed against the bottom of the crock. So that is step one. Alright, now I have already put my lye in and just spin it just a little bit, but this is how to bring your soap to trace. And then now I mixed it for about 2 minutes solid when I first put the lye in, and so now I am just mixing it just a little bit, and then I'll let it set for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll mix it some more. While we're doing that, I will go ahead and put some lye in another crock so you can see what I'm doing. And you never like put lye in this one and put lye in this one and don't mix immediately. You always mix immediately. So now this is when we first have the lye in the oils. I like to keep it at a slight angle, but keep the beater firmly pressed against the bottom of the crock. So that is step one. Now, I have let these two set a few minutes, so now I'll come back and I will do them a few more minutes. Oh, I lost my beater again. My stick blender's giving out. It's time to get a new one. Oh, I had an itch. Sorry. And now I'll do some circular motions, but I keep the beater firmly under the surface of the lye. Alright, now that my lye has been going for just a little bit, I'm going to put them on low. And we'll come back to this one. And you can see how that one has a, I don't know, maybe you can see with the camera, but see how that one has a thicker appearance, or you can't see through it appearance, where this one looks a little bit more translucent. So the process is already started. Now I'm going to put lye in this one. And this one is a real pain in the butt because the crock is very, very, very shallow. See the difference? It's good in some ways for when you're doing rebatching, but because it's easier to work the soap with the stick blender when it starts to soften up. But it's worse. And I know that's probably not a word, worse. Anyway, it's not as good when it comes to not getting splashed on. So I highly recommend the tall crocks over the skinny ones, because you really have to watch yourself and watch your stick blender. If you'll notice, I do not put it at an angle with this one. I just move it around, and then I try some back and forth, but you cannot do an angle because it will spew soap right in your face or on your poor sleeping dog next door. I had a lady that burnt her dog. I felt so horrible, but her stick blender splattered just a little bit and it got her dog. Alright, now we'll do these again. Oh, and look, we're already getting pudding. And once you get pudding, you can bring it up closer to the top a little bit, or at least I do. I'm not going to recommend that you do that, because that's at your own discretion. I'm losing my beater again. And you can tell it's light trace, possibly, with the light. It just has little tiny little ribbons, but it's not like majorly rose up over the top of the soap. Okay, now it's time to turn this one on low. And because it's thicker, it doesn't splash as easy. If you'll notice, I still am not cocking the stick blender with this one. I'm keeping an up and down straight motion. And it is time to turn this one on low. Now I'm going to let them all rest just for a few minutes, and I will bring you back so that you can see how to bring soap in a crock pot to trace. Alright, now we are looking at the soap. It's just been about 3 minutes. Oh, there we go. And this one here just has, it's really not quite to a light trace because it's not making ribbons at all. Now these first two, yeah, they're hitting trace. Now sometimes they'll fool you. They'll be real thick on the top, but they'll be thin on the bottom. And not stick blending enough can cause your soap to overflow. Now, another thing that will cause soap to overflow is if your crock pot, even when set on low, is just too hot. Every once in a while, you just get a crock pot that just gets too hot. I think we're going to have a medium trace. Nope. This is almost at a firm trace. It is just a touch soft, but almost to the firm trace. You can see I'm doing circular motion. And it is very important. Yeah, see, I'm going to see if I can get that where you can see it. Yeah, see the little puddle? But it's just not quite puddly enough. Whoop, my cord of my camera got hung. And that's what I call a medium to light trace. You just get a little bit of puddly up on the top. And everything, but it's not to a hard trace or a firm trace, and we want firm trace. Okay, so now I'm going to do this one over here some more. And you can see, I can see just little dimples where the drops are landing on the soap. I don't know if you can see those, maybe. So, but that's not even to a light trace yet. Okay, see how tall that sits and how it's staying that tall? That means we have got firm or hard or the right kind of trace. For me, anyway. So I'm putting on the lid. I have it on low. And now this will cook for an hour. And then I will stir it. And you've got to stay right with it. Because sometimes your crocks get too hot. And you didn't cool the oils down enough. You didn't check your temperature good. And it will boil over real easy. And then You weren't there to catch it before it boils over. Then you got to clean up your mess. So I highly recommend that you stay with it. So this is how to bring your soap to a good firm trace for hot process soap making. Okay, it has been an hour, and you can see how the soap has came up and doubled over itself. So it has grown up around the sides and folded over. When it has done that and it's been about an hour, you're good for your first stir. So this is what it looks like. It'll still have lots of white foamy bits in it and some Vaseline streaks. You'll see some coloring in there, but you'll have to look at my video on what to do with your scraps to know about that. And so this is just how to do it step by step. So we have our soap. I've thoroughly stirred it now. And I'm going to tap off that, and then I'm going to clean my edges. And then I think one of the handiest little things is this icing spatula. It's stainless steel. And you can clean down the edges really good. And then just knock it off in there. And that keeps your edges clean and keeps you from getting a lot of little dry bits in the soap or bits that get too hard too fast. So, and you see now that it looks sort of yellow and foamy. Since I've stirred it, it has lost its Vaseline appearance that it had just a little bit of, which is what we're going for, is a Vaseline look. So that is what soap looks like when it's been going an hour and it was time to stir it. Now we're just going to put our lid back on it. We still have it on low, and on this crock pot it gets too hot. So ever so often, about every 10 minutes, I cut it off, and then 10 minutes later I cut it back on. And I keep doing that through the whole process. If you don't, the first 30 minutes is your main time to watch about boil over. But if that happens, what you want to do, if you see that your soap is going to boil over, and you have to stay with it the first hour, you just can't turn your head and get busy doing something else. So anyway, keep it on low and then turn it off, and then turn it back on, turn it off, turn it back on every 10 minutes. And also you'll see it coming up, and if it does boil over on you, don't sweat it. It just happened. You just clean everything up. You can see here where this one has boiled over before, and I've got soap. I just take my spatula. See, here's the soap that come over the edges. So I just take my spatula, I just clean everything up, poke it back in the crock, and keep on trucking. Don't get upset. If you think you've overcooked it to the point that it's, like you've went 2 hours or 3 or 4 hours and it's gotten too dry and you think you've overcooked it, put a little bit of water in it. Put a couple tablespoons of water in it. It can't hurt anything. I mean, you put a cup of water in there, yes, you're gonna, mess with it, but put a couple tablespoons, stir that up, let it get hot through and through, and work it around, and so don't throw out your soap just because one little thing didn't go perfect. Try to keep working with it. Alrighty, well, that is how you, look, we got all these crocks going, and I'm fixing to do a video on how to make homemade honey and oatmeal goat milk soap and tea tree and oatmeal goat milk soap. So, unscented on one of them. Alrighty, well, keep an eye on my channel. Okay, now because I added some of my scraps and because I'm using stearic acid, I like to take a stick blender to my soap to make sure all the little bits get dissolved good. It's just a little extra precaution. Can you see the little hard bits that get around the edges on the top? I've just started doing that. It's not a requirement. It's just something I've started doing. And then I still keep my sides cleaned down good. See there, I got a little bit of a dry bit, so I'm going to push it down inside there so it'll get all molten again. Alright, and now these are still cooling. We're looking to get them down to 150, and so we're just still cooling them. But I just wanted to show you that little trick. If you get little hard pieces that won't take the color or get a little hard around the top, you can take your stick blender to it. Hello YouTube. Alright, now I've added my colorant, my super fats, and now I have let it cool with the lid on and the crock pot off. And I have got it down to 160. And so because I'm going to use 2 batches for 1 mold, which is the mold right there, I'm going to take it out of my crock pot and put it in this bowl and continue the rest of the process from here. So I will be right back and show you once I've gotten all the soap into the pot. Okay, I have got my soap in here, and we'll look at the temperature. Usually taking it out of the pot brings it down a little bit, and we may have it down. Swirling it around helps. I'm tired of sitting down. Okay, and we're just getting close to 150, which is right where we want it. Yep, so we are going to color. We're going to add our essential oils. And I had them pre-measured in my little shot glasses. These things work beautifully for that. And you know that you have not let it get cool enough, because your nose will sting when you are stirring your essential oils, because you're flashing off the fragrance. Okay, I'm going to work this together just a little bit more, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, I have got all my essential oils worked in. I just needed 2 hands. So now we're going to start putting it in the mold. I have started adding stearic acid to my soap, and I have found that it makes it a little stiffer right off the bat, and I have a harder time putting a decorative top on it. And I really like putting a decorative top on there, but I like my customers having a nice hard bar too. So, you know, maybe a decorative top is not as important as the longevity of your soap. Because a bar of soap that lasts a good long while makes customers happy. I'm pushing the bits that got a little hard real sort of quick down. Okay, I gotta beat it, so maybe y'all can see. I lost you. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're still recording. I know you're all dying laughing out there. Let's see what we can find to put you on so that you don't go sailing off. Let's see. I don't even think you can see now. I know I'll give you all a headache. Okay. And this mold has got tall sides on it, so I have to work with it differently than one of the ones that don't. So I'm going to just rough up the top just a little. It's really quite depressing. I love the stearic acid because it makes my soap so much nicer when it comes to hardness, but I really can't put a decorative edge on it like I used to could. I used to could do pretty swirls and all kinds of stuff like that. So I guess I'll just have to see how it goes and see which way I end up liking better. You never know, I might just decide to do a flat top from now on. I think that's sort of gobbledygook. This is my tea tree and lemongrass. Oh, it smells awesome. I love the way the lemongrass smells. I make this one specifically, and I recommend it because it's good for people with acne. But I have a lot of people get it that have foot fungus issues and other issues too. But I sell a lot of this one for acne related issues. And sometimes I do this right here. I push down around the sides, and that pushes it out in the middle. And it sort of gives it a pretty rounded top. We'll see. It usually works real well. Okay, there you go. Now that's how I put it in the mold. And all these scraps in this bowl, I will scrape up and put in my scrap bowl. And have those ready when we need them. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've got several other soaps down there. This is my lemon tea tree. I'll show you my other soaps if I can. I had to put them down here on the bottom today because my shelf was dirty that I normally put them on. But there is our 4 loaves, and then these 2 are waiting for our goat milk soap that I'm fixing to do. So y'all be looking for that video. Alright, y'all have a great day.